Everyone. I'm sitting here ready to show you some great photos. Everybody's monitor or screen will look differently. I just wanted to let you know I'm looking at mine. I did this whole PowerPoint and looked great, and then I flung it to my TV and it looks really bright. So I'm sorry if maybe some of the photos might be oversaturated, but they might not be. It's not due to the photographer, it's just about the technology. So with that, I'll begin. So as a photographer, you know, you're not born overnight. It really truly takes a lifetime. I did start out like anybody else my age and my generation with, you know, Instamatics and cube flashlights. And then I got my first big black camera. It was a Pentax K1000 when I was like in high school. But I still didn't. I've never taken a course, and I've always gone by my gut and what I like to look at a photo. The old days, though, you used to have to wait until the film was developed. I never learned darkroom work, but now you can take as many photos as you want on your big black camera or on your phone, and you can throw away all the things that are junk. I do not adhere to the policy that you have to get it right in camera. And that's too restrictive for me. But when it comes to roses, it's very different. As Diane said, I'm part of the Photographic Society of Rhode Island, and the PSA rules are just more, you know, artistic, and there's specific, you know, language around the art of photography. You know, we're just trying to show the rose off to its best. So I've only been doing this for 8 years with any intention, my whole rose career here. But today I'm going to just talk about the fundamentals. Basically, I see a lot of photos that come in for competition that are out of focus or have some lighting issues. And then, of course, how to use your phone. It will apply to a lot of Androids, just the basics of how to take great pictures. I'm an iPhone user now, so most of my photo taking has been with an iPhone at this point. I converted maybe about 3 years ago when a phone was gifted to me. So this rose here, Variegated de Bologna, is over at Elizabeth Park in the historic Rose area. And that was all the photos in this will have been taken with my iPhone. So I'm going to show you a few pictures here while they're being shown on a slideshow, a little slideshow. I will try to name the varieties for you. Easter basket. Easy on the eyes. South Africa. Fitzhugh's diamond, that was one spray. Julie Andrews. George Oliver, named after my dad. Yeah, Raspberry Kiss, I believe. I think it's Julie Andrews as a bud. Rosa Carolina. Treasure Trail. And last, Marietta. Oh, it does that every time. Okay. So here we go. So these are rose or any kind of flower tips. The rose that you see there is Julia Child. We want fresh petals and stamens. No one wants to look, unless you're doing, some avant-garde, dead flower picture. You want fresh petals and stamens. The coloration has to be true to the variety, good symmetry. If you want exhibition form, distinctive centers, you know, no distractions, petal faults, foliage, is it clean? Are you, petaloids, are they there? Are you hiding your stamens? Um, and then the inflorescence of the sprays. So it has a pleasing shape from front or from the side, your basic circles, triangles, and ovals. In composition, during the pandemic, I was a house manager to a group of developmentally disabled young adults. And this rose, Ferdinand Pitchard, was in this person's yard, just hanging over their brick wall with a granite top. And I just fell in love with her. And I just love cascading roses. So that's what that photo is. And of course, I didn't have my big black camera when I was working. So, who is your audience? I really want you to remember this. So, if it's a competition with rules, then follow the rules. For camera club, any other kind of competition. And the digital ARS digital competition, I suggest everybody needs to enter. It's a really great show. And then hopefully more and more rose shows in photography are going to be around the country, including at our national show in September. Is it a friend or a family member as a gift, right? So lots of times that's the same thing. Those are sort of like when you go to a show, you've got the fan favorites, or you have someone from the audience, the crowd, visitors get to choose their favorite. And any of your friends or family members love your photos. It might not be, top notch to win an award, but they'll always love your photos. And then, is it your own pleasure? Is it something that you really love? If you really love only striped roses, then you're going to want to take pictures, for yourself. And then a great thing is calendar contests. If your club has a calendar contest, generally it's really just that wow factor that people just go, wow, I want that. I want to be able to see that in any given month throughout the year. So your composition is pleasing to the eye, right? And it allows the viewer to move throughout the image without landing anywhere that you don't want them to. It's more about a focal point, what are the backgrounds doing, and eliminating distractions. So like even in this picture, I had to blur out the granite that was below the photograph because it was outstanding too much. And then try to avoid anything you don't want in your photograph, right? So really look around your frame on your phone and look to see what's in the frame. And go a little bit further so that when you go to crop it, you keep the things you want in the photo. So Ansel Adams, as Greg was talking to us about it before, was a good photograph is knowing where to stand. And so once again, these are photos from Elizabeth Park in Hartford, Connecticut. And the old Rose Federation Garden, the Heritage Garden, is the one on the left. And, just bringing it out to the rest of the garden. So showing some structure of the garden itself. They put them in these raised fieldstone beds. And it's just really pleasant, once again, flowing over. And then, of course, the arches. And I think that's Excelsior that is blooming above. Their bloom is really anywhere between like the 12th and the 19th of June. And then it's just greenery. So with this one on my phone, not the one on the right, what I did was, you know, I took it more on considered a landscape or a fisheye view, and started and stood to the left so that I could see all the arches going down versus a straight on. I'm not a straight on kind of gal. So I like symmetry in everything else in my life, but not in my photography. That's Burst of Joy. There's a cute little garden up in New Hampshire at the border of Massachusetts called Fuller Gardens. And that was the first time I saw this rose, and it was just fantastic. So when you're creating an image, and that's what you're doing, you're not taking a photo, you're creating a photo. And I really strongly suggest you start thinking about it in that way, because otherwise it's a snapshot. So take your time, you know, view the bloom from all angles, study your prospects in your garden, see, you know, who's going to look really good. Just like you would when you're choosing a rose you want to take into a show and exhibit, because this is going to be captured for posterity, right? And you're going to put it on your wall, give it away, and you want it to look good. So, you know, that whole thing, you know, old blooms, blown out blooms, blooms with flaws, faded colors. You don't want those, right? You want it fresh at the moment. And that's the best. Why I love photography for my rose career is because you can take them anytime and you don't have to wait for a rose show. Okay. You take it at any time when you see your perfect bloom, and you've got it. You've got a winner chicken dinner to go to a contest at the ARS at any time, or your local Rose Society. Once again, check your backgrounds because everything will be in focus. It's coming from your phone, which has a very, very quick shutter speed. So everything's going to be tack sharp. Okay. And then I'm going to explain how you can make the background blurry on your phone a little later. Minimize your distractions by framing it. Of course, we always say, and it's true, morning is best. Afternoon sun, like late day, you know, evening, and sun is great. Noon, not so good, but if that's all you've got, you just finished entering all your exhibits and you're at Hershey Gardens, and you decide to take your deflector or a reflector or a hat, or you have your best friend stand in front of the sun, so then you have a better coloration of the rose itself. And you can adjust your exposure even on your phone. This is Bengali. It was a Cortez rose that never went anywhere. I was lucky enough to be gifted the rose from a good friend in New York. And for me, once again, on the bush is better than the studio shot. I love those two, you know, and you have to use that if you need to go in because now it's too windy outside. You can't control the light, things like that. You could take it, cut it, put it in a vase, bring it in the house, and fun with it. And when you go inside, it's best to have your natural light coming from windows. Once again, it's a nicer, softer look on your rose photography. Use your flash only to fill in light, but remember your flash from your phone is going to be barely a squint. You know, I mean, it's not going to fill in too much, and it's usually too far away to make any difference. Now there's two parts to this iPhone uses. This is what I made this like over a month ago, and then I found out about live view and the fun things that can happen with it. But most of the time you want to shut off your live view on your iPhone because you You don't need like a mini video of it. And then magnifying, getting close-ups. So I'll show you later about how to get macro and how to get in close-ups. I really hate the idea of macro because even how it's stated now for us, macro is not really macro. It's really about extreme close-ups. But we still use the language macro. So when you hear that going around, that is what we consider an extreme close-up. Really just something, but when you look at true macro photos, it's like seeing all the 16 million pixels in the eye of a fly. That's what the macro people really want to see. But you can clean up noise, which is pixelation in the back in your post-processing. So holding your phone becomes very different because we're used to talking on our phone like this. And when we talk to our phone like this, then we think we should take a picture that way. And we forget to take the horizontal frame. And so when the horizontal frame occurs, that's what happens with big black camera people. They are used to holding their camera this way. And then we have to remind them, go do some verticals. Okay, so, but when I love the guy on the left and doing that, you're like really just shoving the phone into your palm. You're just shoving it into your palm and really holding tight. And then your arms are close to you and you're acting like a tripod with your two legs. So, and you don't cover up your camera. A lot of people do, like the lady on the side, because we're used to that, but that also gives you the opportunity, if you turn your camera around, then you can press this button on an iPhone and it will take the shot. To me, it's not a very sensitive shutter button, so pressing down creates some movement and you might have a blurry photograph. And then you got these handy dandy cool little tripods now for iPhones and just phones with cameras, and they come out handy dandy. They come out, they're small. You just can squeeze it right in there, and it helps you steady anything to get you a clear, in focus photograph. So you'll hear HDR, you'll see on your phone, it could say HDR in the corner like I have circled there. It means high dynamic range. It works to create a perfectly lit photo with more color and detail in both the bright and the dark areas. And it refers to the difference between the lightest and the darkest tones in your photo. You can grab that in your settings. On your phone, you go to the settings, you go all the way down to your camera, and you can choose the HDR to be on all the time. I would say do that. You're really going to see a difference in your photographs. So here's focus. So it really means a clean, crisp image, and they have very fast shutter speeds on phone cameras, very fast. So everything is going to be in focus. It really is. But some of the tools is use the tripod, like I say. Make sure you're steady. If you don't have steady hands, use the tripod. But as I see in the picture down below, hold the screen where you want the focus to be, and that area will be where it's focused. So if I had a picture of doing that with the rose above, it would have been at the center. And then, even then, when that comes up on your phone, there is a slider to the right of the box that will help you adjust your exposure for the sun and lighting, which a lot of people didn't know that was possible right there without having to go any further. So zooming in. So one great advantage that I've had in being able to talk to people is that I learned something from them. So in this case, what I had learned from a good friend of mine, Patsy Cunningham, was this fact that I don't know if you, hopefully you see when I use my cursor, but every iPhone has the 0.5 and it gives you more of this like fisheye, far away, landscape, kind of bizarre. This is your normal, like at 1, and I stopped at 2. This photograph that I took from the 14 went to 3, but the 15 now has 5, which is absolutely incredible. And then this is what happens. So I'll show you later when these come up, when you hit any of these, you can move your finger up just a little bit and you get this dial that goes back and forth. This is the best it can do with your native camera on your phone. Yes, you could go all the way up to 15, but it's not, the quality of the picture diminishes. So when you do that, then you have a lot of cleaning up to do in post-processing, and you might not be really happy with it. And I would think that the only reason why you would need something, you were that far away, you have a phone, then it becomes a snapshot. It's not something you're going to want to put up on, up on the wall. So there are 3 types of light. There's ambient or found light, and of course that's my favorite. I love doing things from windows and doorways, and it just gives this really, but I'm a photographer who likes darker than brighter, so that's just a next disclaimer here. There's the natural light, the daylight, the sunshine, and overcast. Overcast days are great for all kinds of photography. It really is, because it has the true color. It will nothing is garish. And then you have your artificial light, of course, with lamps and flash and circle lamps and all that other stuff that came out with the pandemic and people having to broadcast from home. So here's a little carrot that I call these carrots. I work as a database administrator, so I call these carrots. And when you hit this carrot on your phone, on that opening screen, it will allow you to come down here, and this is your exposure meter, and then you can make it darker by going to the left, the minus, or brighter going to the right. So right then and there, you could be changing your exposure. Okay, some of these other ones is that that's live view. This is your ratio. 4:3 is your basic. It's a 6:8, but you also can go 16:9. Sometimes I really like that for longer shots. This is your timer, and these are the different filters you can attach right away to you and just play. Beg of you, just to play. So you might see on this screen, this is out. But once this comes on, you'll see it up here that it's moving. And this is all on your screen, right and readily at your hands, as readily as it was on your big board. So distinction. So when all else fails, just like in horticulture and in a rose show, distinction will win out at the end. Okay, and it's really about, will you tire looking at that image? Have you seen it before? So have you seen one stamen? You've seen them all. Did you see one winghorn thorn? You've seen them all, right? But it's what you've done with it. Is it new? Is it different? So in this image here of George Oliver, all I did was I repeated the image, the bloom, one of my processing called Snapseed, and I just did it like a multiple exposure. And it was just sitting on a windowsill, took the picture, and then I played with it afterwards to become that. Now, it might not be somebody else's cup of tea. It looks very Victorian to me. Plus, it's the rose named after my dad, so I love it. So here are some examples. So you can go on and have fun. The one on the left is white on white. It got a blue ribbon last year at the National Rose Show. That was iceberg. Everybody goes, iceberg, ugh. What's with iceberg? Well, you know what? It's beautiful if you make it into art. You know, it's not just, doesn't look so common anymore, does it? And in the middle, I considered that the Julia Child macro was one of my entries, because I did move in. I got all those fine fur on the sepals, and I got all the little dots, little bubbles. You can do that, by the way, with you could take it indoors, and the rose didn't have to be wet, and you could put little syringe drops of water on the leaf itself. Now you've created an image. And the other one is a Moser House Shed Rose, where I just took a portion of the rose. It's a rambler, and I just love its little button eye, and I threw it up in the upper left-hand corner so it'd have movement from upper left to the bottom and back up again. So there are camera modes on your phone. You've got time lapse. You won't use that too much unless you want to keep it. If you live in an area it doesn't rain much, I guess you could keep it outside on a tripod, put on time lapse, and maybe you'll see your bloom open up overnight. There's slow-mo, very little chance we want that and talk about it today, but the three I want to talk about is your regular photo, portrait, and pano. So I've already talked about traditional photo shooting. Right now on the phone, it's one half time, one time, two, sometimes goes up to 5. It gives you focused images with little to no pixelation. Then your portrait. And now when you go into portrait, it always says, stand back, stand back. Well, you don't need to. That's if like you take a picture of a person, right? But because there are other apps in post-processing that will give you some of that bokeh and some of the softness behind the rose. But use it because you can get all those other features later on a little wheel that's at the bottom to change the style of the photograph. You know, being a natural light all the way up to black and white can happen right there in that portrait mode. Plus, it gives you the ability to change your f-stop, and an f-stop just says, you know, what's going to be sharp and what's going to be blurry. So it's an awesome way to shoot rose photos. Panorama, I would think, is really great because in camera, when you go left to right and there's a little line you follow, you can maybe get a whole garden, maybe the whole Hershey garden, whole you know, the whole scene in of a garden, because we have a lot of the rose show photography and rose show photography ask for garden scenes, right? So you're going to get all the structure of the garden by doing a panorama, and the stitching happens in the phone. Very smart little phones. I'm serious. I didn't believe it before, but it's true if you can use it. So example to the left is this plain photo mode, doing all the things I told you about. Your portrait mode here, you get to change the f-stop so that they can be in focus. They'll come up a reel at the bottom and you can play with it. And then here's a panel, and it tells you on the phone itself to follow the line and keep the line straight. The other thing I just learned the other day is you could do verticals. So put your phone on horizontal, follow the line straight up, and you're going to get that entire arrangement in from top to bottom in a panorama. It will do some of its funky vertical stuff, but you can, you know, like columns might not be straight, etc. But you can fix that in post-processing. I just like this image. So now I'm just going to go over some of the images that I have taken and some of the things that I'd like to talk about. But this was in editing that I was able to make it look like it was a panel. So you could do that afterwards by cropping. So this is Joy. Most people wouldn't say this is Joy, but I just loved how it came out. That's all her coloration in her petals. Then I had fun with the color of the rose itself. So it almost looked like it was a background, and then I put a frame on it. So all that happens in post-processing. Highlight a portion of the bloom. So you go in and do a lot of cropping, play with it. If only this section is in focus, why do you need the rest of the bloom? Right? So those are the fun things you can do in post-processing. So here's where I wanted to challenge you and have a discussion, because I want to know, what are the things that challenge you most about using your phone? And the best camera you have is the one that's on you, and these are on us all the time. And then to ask you whether or not there was any terminology used in the presentation that you weren't familiar with that I can answer any questions. So I think Gary's going to help me at this point and open up the floor and see if people have questions or hand raised or anything like that.
So we're going to go into a discussion session. If you'd like to comment or ask a question, raise your hand and I will unmute you, and you'll have to unmute and ask your question or comment. So go ahead.
Don't be
All
shy
right,
now.
Leanne, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hello?
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Oh, one of the biggest challenges I have when I take pictures, even with the regular camera, is sometimes there's distracting things in the background that you can't get rid of. But I think in post-processing you can, if you know how or have the right software. Is there anything that's free or inexpensive that would help me with that?
Yes. Photoshop Express is free for a phone app. And I believe that it also flips over to your laptop or desktop as well. It has a healing tool. There's also a healing tool in the free app called Snapseed. And with those, you end up, you could take out wires. It's once again, it's a learning curve. You got to figure out, your hand and the size of the tool itself as a brush to eliminate it. But yeah, lots of things can be eliminated, and people are shocked when you go, "Oh my God!" Because and now you could do it as a clone, you could do it as AI generative. It's so much stuff with all free things.
Great, because in public gardens you can't always just remove things you don't want in your photo.
It's very true. It's very true. They don't even want you to put your tripod anywhere in some of them. And I remember being at the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, and they were there's cops there. We're not going to steal the whole bush, but there's security at the whole place. So I was just kind of laughing at that time. Another question?
Lois Stotts, I've unmuted you. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. I guess maybe not. All right, Karen Matson, I've unmuted you. Go ahead.
Okay, hi. So I'm from the Pacific Northwest, And so one of the things I'm having a problem with is I have a new S23 that allows you to erase parts of your photograph that you don't want. And what it does is it takes a portion of the color blend that was behind where the thing was erased. So when does it get to be a point where it's too much of an erase effect to not have a good photograph?
What my feeling about that is I would expand the picture
Mhm.
and see if someone had enlarged it. Is there a real distinction line between the correction and the rest of the photo? If it's blended really well and you have the ability to feather in between, it will be much smoother and not as noticeable. If the color is completely off, just try again.
What does the technique feathering refer to?
Feathering is basically it allows you to have a radius, and then you have around the radius, the outside edge, you could decide whether that's 100% or 50% or 0%. And that allows you, but I don't know on that erasure feature, because I think you're talking about one of the high-end Samsung phones, correct?
Yeah. It is.
Right. So, everything can be found on YouTube. So I would go to YouTube and say, what is your, the ability for erasure to control the feathering? And that is going from very sharp out to unfocused. So it's a smooth transition from focus to the background.
I have one more question too. When you want to change the background to the white that you did for iceberg, or the one that I see a lot in the photos that I enter in the contests, because I help judge too in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
That technique seems to really define a line around the rose itself. I don't get a smooth transition of changing the background to a different color. I mean,
Right.
it's
So
like someone took a pencil and did a line around the whole rose, and it's
right. So once again, it's in your blending modes in Photoshop, right? So if you take something into Lightroom, even my my photos on my phone, I take it always into Lightroom most of the time myself, and then I go into Photoshop. But even in Photoshop, you can have blending. There's blending layers, and with that blending tool, you blend those edges.
Okay, so the new Photoshop the new Photoshop probably has more of these features than the old Photoshop program I have on my computer.
You know, it's interesting. I just took we just had a workshop in my camera club about all those things that Lightroom and Photoshop can do. I don't even own Photoshop. I own Photoshop Elements. I wanted a standalone. I could download into my computer and that's it. And I didn't want to pay this monthly fee. And so, but then he taught me like how to do it. So even with your older one, if you know the version of the numbers that are usually behind it, go onto YouTube and someone's going to teach you how to do that kind of blending and which tool to use and how to use your sliders.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Elizabeth Schleicher, go ahead. I've unmuted you.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Jackie. It's a great talk. Mine's a little bit different, more about storage. I wondered how you organize your photos, and do you put them, I have external hard drives, so I put them there in the cloud and USB sticks, but I end up having so many so many versions of things. What do you do with your photos after you've taken a million of them?
Well, every year I promised myself I'm actually going to start using the catalogs in Lightroom because it does get saved to the cloud there and they don't go away. but I have a very convoluted, and no one really wants to follow the way in which I save things. But on the phone, you could put things into albums, so that, you know, right now I have 7,000 photos on my phone, but that's on the regular section that's called recents. And then I open up an album and I'll put things just in the album,
Mhm.
like only roses, or
Right.
only dahlias, or only landscapes. And I just start naming folders where I can pull something in. I like, you know, I like to do a year, a folder for the year, and then subfolders. So either by date, the day I took it, or the day I uploaded it to my computer. And then even within that, I make a folder of ones that I've already processed. So if I just needed a quick and easy photo to use, I could go into the process ones, look at it, go, oh yeah, that will work, and then, you know, submit it somewhere. So you know, the best thing to do is just maintain whatever system is best for you, because every year, like on my laptop itself, I only have 23 and now 24. 22 and before are saved on an external hard drive in that same format, but over there, so that when I plug the external hard drive into my laptop, I could pull up anything, since I started taking more and more photos in 2015.
But just a quick anecdote to it. I had an external hard drive, and I was getting ready to do a PowerPoint presentation, and the external hard drive digitally exploded, and not physically. But because I had all my photos on cards at that time, because I was using a camera, not the cell phone. But I would recommend, if you use compact flash or whatever you use in your camera, don't delete that card, because that's your negative. I've always
Well,
that
with
was
Lightroom,
saving
it's
grace
saved
for.
forever, because Lightroom, all your catalogs are saved to the cloud.
Yeah, but
So,
this was before cloud. But I mean, it was just a nightmare to have it.
oh, I know. I mean, but that's the same thing. If you lose your phone, forget it, right? All your
Mhm,
photos are gone. So it's almost, you know, it's kind of, I don't know, sad,
mhm.
definitely sad, but it happens to a lot of people. I don't know if anybody else online can give us a suggestion to how to protect even your external hard drives.
I'd like to comment. If you go to a company named Synology, they have what they call network attached storage, and you can set it up whereas with the number of hard drives, and there's an option that you can add to it that if one of the hard drives fails, you just replace it and you don't lose anything because you'll have multiple hard drives. And with the Synology program, which is what I'm using for my photographs, they now have an option where you can create albums and put photo album covers on it. And I actually have it on my iPhone, and I can go wherever I want nationally. And if I want to show friends or people photographs in my photo albums, I can do that. I'm bypassing Dropbox and all the other people, but that is an option that you might consider.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this is
All right,
Craig.
James Beardsley, I've
Oops.
unmuted you. Go ahead, unmute and ask your question, please.
It's more of a comment. What I do is I've got an external hard drive where everything gets saved to it, whether I take it with my phone or with a SLR. But that is also backed up online to Backblaze, which is a company that backs up, is a backup software company. And I can back up my external hard drives to Backblaze. Plus I have, like Gary said, I've got a 10 gigabyte drive that everything gets backed up at home. So I've got my hard drives, I've got the 10 gigabyte backup at home, and then I've got the online backup. So I'd have very little chance of losing anything.
What is your backup? What's it called again?
Backblaze.
Backblaze. BACK.
BLAZE.
Okay. I
And
so.
they do online, and you can do, I've got 3 computers and they're all part of that same backup, and they'll tell you when you haven't backed up. They'll send you an email that said, you haven't backed up certain computer in such a length of time, so you can go back and do it.
Awesome. You know, the other thing is I learned several years ago, and I try to keep very religious to it, is at the, first of the year, you're not doing much, whatever. Just go through all your albums, and really what was junk was junk. You're never going to look at it again. Get rid of it. You always think you're going to go back, but if you haven't gone back in a year, you're really not going to use it. But some photographers are like, someday that is going to be very important to me.
Well,
And I can use it. So I always say that you can cut down on the number of images you have left to still process, because there's more to come.
well, with the new AI interfaces, there's software like On1 or Topaz that you can take bad photos and actually get them in focus.
Oh yeah, it's not just the focus things, but sometimes it's just your subject, and you go, "What was
Well,
I
yeah,
thinking of?"
some of the photos are just bad.
Right. You go to Alaska, and how many times you come back home with, "There's an iceberg. There's another iceberg. Here's another iceberg." Right. So
Right.
that happens to photographers too, because you're in the moment, right? And you're just loving everything you see, and you're not being discriminating unless you particularly go out with intention to photograph a subject. You tend to just click away, because we can now, and we're not thinking like the old photographers where it costs something.
But there's also things like Google Photo and a company called SmugMug. Google Photos is free as long as you have a Google account. But SmugMug is a paid account, but it automatically backs up your phone also.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks for sharing. Craig, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to say that nowadays, of course, you can get solid state drives. So they're not mechanical. I would say they're less likely to fail. It's like a big version of a thumb drive, really. So there you are, and they're small too. You can put one in your shirt pocket that can hold a couple terabytes. So
Cool.
One comment before I go to Karen. Nowadays, we are talking about iPhones. Actually, iPhones now have an option, whereas if you have duplicate photos on your phone, it will let you know, and you can either delete them or merge them, or whatever you want to do with them. But just a comment. Karen
Okay.
Matson, I've unmuted you. Go ahead and comment, please.
No, she already answered my questions. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. So we'll have more time for questions, because I'm going to go into our processing side of this discussion, if everybody's okay with that, I hope. So of course there are multiple apps to use with your phone. The phone itself comes with its own editing app, I should say, and that you could just, you can do everything you would do with any other app right on the phone, Android or iPhone. They have, it just says edit when you look at your picture, and you go to edit, and, like left to right in this picture here, this is an automatic. If you hit it, this is your exposure, this is your brilliance. Play with them. They just slide back and forth. And, then you can do any of the things at the bottom. This is all the filters that come with your particular phone. And these are all the filters you see here: vivid cool, vivid warm, things like that. You can crop in yours, and get it where you want it to be. And it's by hitting this button here, if you can see my cursor, and that's where you start getting all your little edits. But even just this, when I showed to people where they can change the brilliance, or they can change the highlights or the shadows or the vibrance. For anything natural, vibrance is better than saturation, but play with both. but saturation tends to look just that, saturated and fake. Vibrance kind of gives it a life. And then it always gives you the option to go back if you made a mistake. Because in this one, when you make adjustments and hit save, you don't get a save as and go someplace else. That's now your photo. So once again, what I did on this one, this was at a beautiful little house garden that we visited down in Shreveport on our trip through Louisiana, and you know, everything was in focus, but I just, you know, went to f-stop, came down, I was in the portrait mode, and I just moved it a little bit more so that only this was in focus and everything else started being out of focus on the photo. But that's now when you take a picture in portrait, you can do your f-stop and change your depth of field. So it's pretty cool. So with Lightroom, I took that back photo that was here, and then I took it up into Lightroom and this. Now, lately, I've been having a lot of fun with combining a ton of apps. With it being on the phone, I can just be so creative. I can be like in 15 minutes on a mental health break while I'm working, that I just want to do something else, and I sit there and I just process an image right on my phone. Now, this image was old. This was like from 3 years ago, and I just played with it the other day with some textures and some other apps that are free, and I just, you know, just added to it and just have fun. Here's the Snapseed. Now, Snapseed came out pretty much first. It goes for Android or for iPhone. That's golden opportunity in my front yard. It's just such a beautiful rose. I love it. But you can do everything. You can tune your image. You can sharpen it with details. You can do funky curve things, and curves is just bringing it, you know, your RGB, red, green, blue levels in all different ways. You can do your white balance, meaning going from like very cool to very warm. You can crop it, you can rotate it. Perspective is cool. You can just change the angle and the perspective of the photo. The expand I use because it actually, which is really cool, is that it will expand the image for you in black, white. It's not really that good yet because it's an older, they don't update it as often. But if you use black or white, it almost like it frames it, but it allows the photograph to have some breathing room on the outer edges. Sometimes when you're with your phone, you haven't given enough room to crop it. Then the selective tool is just certain areas would be in focus and other areas not. You've got a bunch of brushes here, and with the brushes you can use it to highlight. That's what I used on the white on white one. It was already, and I just highlight, pardon me, I just highlighted the background to white. Here's another healing tool that I said before. You can make, then comes their filters, HDR, glamour, you know, tonal, contrast, all these things. Oops. I'm so used to scrolling. So, but when it opens, here are your tools, and then they have some specific looks. And then here's where you export it. You can save it to your phone. You can export it someplace else. You can share it with another app. You can take it from this and bring it to another app. And this is all with the luxury of sitting in a chair and not at your computer, or, you know, just lying in bed and doing something before, you know, you go to bed. It's just, I love it. Here's the Photoshop Express that I talked about. the updates on this happens as soon as almost the updates on, this is President Shanley, made by my friend Andy Vanable. Once again, it ends up being just a slider in here. Something, it will be exposure or contrast or highlights or shadows because you're working in light. Then you go to color. Then you can go, you know, to effects. And then you just go ahead and start playing. Then you can download it. Here is a whole bunch of stuff down here with looks and adjustments and smoothing out an image, reframing things, resizing things, doing the heal tool here as well. It's great. It's free. Photoshop Express. I like things that look painterly. That's what we call it. And this Impresso app gives you this ability to, you know, you take it in, you choose your photo, and then you go to all these little settings down here, and it just transforms photos that you may have thought were pretty crummy into something that's acceptable. I almost always take this then and bring it into Lightroom or Photoshop so that I can make the highlights where I want them with a brush and maybe dim some of the corners to make it more like a vignette. I darkened the edge on this love song. Glaze. Glaze is an old app. I can't tell you how old, but it's but I just came upon it, still exists. And it really makes your like there's this heavy glaze sitting on your photo. So it looks like it's a painting. And it's pretty cool. You know, you just you know, you click on this button, you grab a photo from your files, and then you just start clicking these other things here and see if you like them. It's once again just playing, but it applies a texture to your photographs. So I'd like to end thanking my mentors and supporters, and thank you to the American Rose Society for giving me this opportunity to meld my love of roses with photography, because basically in the end, photography has no rules. It's not a sport. It is the result which counts, no matter how it is achieved. So I'll take more questions that people might have about apps or things they need.